Southwest Center School Talk. Collaboration supporting our schools. Southwest Center School Talk. Southwest Center School Talk.
Welcome back to episode 2 of the Southwest Center School Talk podcast. I'm your host, Chris Bozarth. If you listened to our first episode, you'll remember that we really started this growing conversation around artificial intelligence and specifically how our students may be using AI for more than just schoolwork. But instead of just me speculating and having this adult conversation around how kids are using AI, I thought it might be helpful to actually hear from a student. So I'm excited today to welcome my son Jordan to the podcast. So without further ado, we want to welcome Jordan into our studio. Wow, not every day that you walk into a room to applause. But Jordan, welcome to the Southwest Center School Talk podcast.
Yeah, thank you for the invite, even though it may have been bribery, but that's okay.
I'm not above bribes to get somebody to come into the studio. So yeah, lunch and maybe some other items that you needed before spring sports started up. Yeah, whatever it takes to get you here. But we're happy to have you here today. And full transparency, I did make my entire family listen to the podcast, the first episode. So really another important question, Jordan. Did you actually listen to it?
I did. Even though you may have forced us, I did listen.
We call that forced family fun in our household. But we're excited for your opinions today and your thoughts, because I do think it's really important that we hear a student voice. And even though I'm assuming you may not have an AI girlfriend, I do think you're going to be able to lend some pretty good insight today into maybe what tools that students are using today, and even talking about this human connection piece. So one of the things that I did forget to mention, just so you have some context, Jordan is currently a high school senior. So even though he's not like a middle school student or somebody who's kind of in the middle of this adolescent stage, I do think he's able to lend a voice and a lens through which teenagers are engaging with technology. Matter of fact, Jordan is at an age where he doesn't know a world without smartphones. They literally were invented the year he was born. So I think about the way he's experienced technology in his lifetime and how different it is than myself and many of our listeners. And so Jordan, as we think about this AI question through this lens of a teenager, let's start with the schoolwork piece, because I think it is important to start there. So when we do think about students using AI for schoolwork, what does that actually look like specifically for you?
Well, I would just like to clarify, I do not have an AI girlfriend.
That's good to know. I didn't accuse you of having it. I actually assumed you didn't, but I appreciate you letting our listeners know that you do not. So sorry. You may proceed.
To answer your question, for me personally, I use AI to kind of help me understand certain subjects, or like where a teacher may not be able to explain something to me the way I would learn it. AI can.
Okay. So you're using it as a tool maybe to add some kind of context that helps you learning a new subject or digging deeper into a content area. Okay, that makes sense. So now let's think about your peers, maybe either conversations you guys have, and these are things that I'm not aware of. So I'm really curious to know, do kids actually talk about AI much, or is this more of just kind of this quiet thing that we don't talk about?
Well, in my experience, it's pretty quiet, because it might be embarrassing if you have some questions about certain things, like some shameful questions. It's kind of embarrassing to bring up in front of your peers.
True. So you do think it's certainly possible that teenagers and students are using this as a way to consult for information, because it can be hard to go have those embarrassing conversations.
Yes, 100%.
So I want to take a little bit deeper dive into that embarrassing question piece that you just mentioned, because I think some of us are comfortable having those conversations at home. Some of us are comfortable having those conversations with a peer. But as research shows, and as you touched on, like, it's certainly possible that AI is a lot safer, because we know, first of all, it's not going to be judgmental. It's immediately going to give us a response. Yeah. And usually it talks to us in a way that makes us feel good, right?
Yep.
But let's dig into this relationship piece just a little bit more. So thinking about students being comfortable talking to adults at school, what makes a teacher approachable, or what makes a student decide, yeah, that's a person that I can talk to about something?
I'd say a huge part of that is just kind of showing that you care, showing that like you have an interest in what they're doing, maybe inside or outside of school, or like their extracurricular activities, or honestly, if they're not in that, just kind of taking an interest in that person's life and just showing that you care.
Yeah. And it being something that's authentic, right? Like
Yes.
not just this,
Yes.
because I think sometimes we get in kind of robot mode as adults of we just check in with kids, but I've heard you say before, like I know when those teachers have really, they're making an attempt to make a connection and they're not just kind of checking a box.
Yes.
Do you think it's possible that students trust AI more than adults?
I'd say for some students, yes, just mainly because they may not have had some sort of adult or some figure in their life that they felt that they could truly trust with their questions, or even if they did tell somebody, like, how would that be judged? Like, would I get some attention somewhere that I don't want? Would more attention be brought to my family that I don't want? Just kind of stuff like that.
No, that makes perfect sense. And I think, and you touched on something. So our experiences outside of school, home life, the way we were raised, all those things are going to definitely factor into our level of trust with adults.
Yes.
And so sometimes those are barriers as educators and as adults in schools that we have to kind of deal with. Like those can be challenges that kids walk into our classrooms with preconceived notions about adults and relationships that we have no control over, but sometimes we've got to break those walls down to be able to get kids to trust us. So when students are actually going through something difficult, as educators, what can we actually do to help? Is it advice? Is it listening? Is it just noticing? And like, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that would be really important. I think if you took the time to just notice that something was wrong, whether it be something as little as like they turned in their work a day late or something, if it's just kind of touching back on that relationship piece, like it just shows that you care and that you're interested in in their life if you notice tiny things that are off with them.
Okay. And that makes sense because I think in human connection, right, it's what we talk about even in the first episode. Like AI doesn't notice those things about us, right? But people do, and we have responsibility for one another. And I think sometimes just having those simple conversations and checking in with people, we don't have to have all the answers. And even that student may not pour their heart out to us, but sometimes just noticing and being available to listen is pretty powerful. So if you could give one piece of advice to adults about your generation, what would it be?
I would say that you got to recognize that we're not very mentally tough just because we've kind of had participation trophies thrown at us our entire lives. Or if you have a question, you can just kind of look it up and within a second, it's right there in the palm of your hand. And because of that, I feel like people may lack some coping skills.
Okay. That's interesting. So it makes me think of a conversation that we had with some colleagues recently, and we were talking about how the shift even from parenting from helicopter parents to what we called lawnmower parents, and this idea that lawnmower parents blaze this trail for their kids where they never really have to face any adversity, that basically as adults we kind of take on all the hard things and we clear this path for them so that they don't have to face hard things. But the problem with that parenting style is that when kids really do face some kind of conflict, whether it's a peer conflict or some kind of situation that the adults can't jump in and save, that the kid has no real skills to know how to deal with that. And that kind of reminds me of how you answered that question. Like we lack some coping skills, kind of maybe because we just weren't put in positions to experience hard things. So we don't have any stamina built up for that. Mm-hmm. So as we're wrapping up this conversation, Jordan, I think about the topics we've covered today, and I really appreciate the insight of kind of how you're using AI and the conversations that you and your peers are having, and really this deeper dive into this relationship piece. I think that's been really important for our listeners to hear. Let's think about AI in the way that we're talking about it at school, whether that be as teachers or administrators or just adults in general, because we've said this before, like we know kids are using it to cheat. And I can only imagine the times when you go over a course syllabus and all these different things when AI is being brought up and all the ways that we don't want you to use it as students, because I know those conversations are happening. What would be helpful for our listeners to hear that might change the way that they talk about AI or what they're even, how they're introducing it to their students within their classroom?
I think that kind of maybe just going away from your curriculum for a second and teaching students how they can use it to learn from what you're teaching or how to understand what you're teaching better through using AI, which it may not be this snap a picture and get an answer in 5 seconds and then not learn anything from it. I think just showing them how they can use it as a learning tool would be very helpful.
Okay, so if I hear you correctly, we're talking about this modeling piece, because the truth is there may be really great tools out there that help with learning that students may not be aware of, and our teachers may not be aware of either, right? But just kind of digging into that world a little bit, because the truth is, at least from my experience, I don't think this is going away. I'm assuming you would agree with that.
I definitely would agree with that.
And so if we know our students are going to use this tool, how do we show them how to use it appropriately? And it means we can't control that, right? Like, we don't get to follow them home and see how they're going to use it. But for some, I think it may make a big difference. We want to thank you for taking time to listen to the second episode of the Southwest Center School Talk podcast. We hope that this conversation has been valuable for you and maybe helped you gain some insight from hearing a student voice. Until next time, I'm your host, Chris Bozarth, and this has been the Southwest Center School Talk podcast.